You thought union would come when he finally chose you, when he healed, when he woke up and ran towards you with open arms. But that's not how the final portal works. The truth is, there's one last crossing before union becomes real. And it's not about him. It's about you. Not the you who waited. Not the you who wondered if you were enough. Not the you who tried to make the connection make sense in the 3D. This portal only opens when the feminine remembers who she was before the pain, before the stories, before she made her worth dependent on whether he stayed or not. This is the final test, not of love, but of embodiment. Because union isn't about getting closer to him. It's about returning to yourself so completely that you no longer need the masculine to validate your light. And when you do that, when you step fully into your frequency without reaching back, the field between you shifts. Suddenly, he feels you in ways he can't explain, not through words, but through the ache in his chest, the visions in his dreams, the pull in his soul that wasn't there before. Because the feminine who crosses this portal no longer asks, "Will he choose me?" She chooses herself, again and again, until her entire reality reflects that devotion. This is the gateway where old timelines burn, where attachments dissolve, where illusions of almost union finally fall away. And here's the paradox. The moment you let go is the moment everything starts to align. Because you were never meant to wait. You were meant to lead, not by force, but by vibration, not by asking for him, but by remembering you never needed to be completed. And now, the energy is ready. The final portal has opened. And the question isn't, when will he arrive? It's, will you cross without needing to be followed? Because once you do, that's when he starts to feel what the soul already chose. There's a moment in every divine feminine's path where she stops. Not because she's giving up, but because she remembers. She remembers the frequency of her soul before the chase, before the ache, before the waiting. And in that remembrance, a door appears, not outside, but within. It's the last portal before union, and it doesn't open with answers. It opens when she finally lets go of the question, when will he come? Because that question is rooted in a wound that says love must arrive from the outside to be real. A wound that echoes every time she was abandoned, forgotten, or not chosen. But this time, something's different. She has felt everything. She has cried through the silence. She has awakened her womb, cracked open her heart, burned through timelines. She has met herself over and over again in the mirror of his delay. And now, she no longer needs to be found, because she's already home. That's when the portal begins to shimmer. Not in the sky, not in his eyes, but in her spine. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself with angels or signs. It simply becomes visible the moment she no longer reaches backward. This is the sacred crossing. And it requires one thing only: releasing the timeline where she waits. Because waiting is no longer aligned. Not for the version of her that she has become. Not for the woman who knows how to hold light even when the masculine retreats. Not for the soul who finally sees that union was never meant to be the destination, but the reflection of her own internal wholeness. Have you felt it? That moment when you suddenly didn't want to chase anymore? When you stopped checking the signs with desperation and started breathing them in as confirmation? when his silence no longer broke you, because you realized your connection to you had become louder. That's the moment the portal opens. It doesn't ask you to stop loving him. It asks you to stop attaching your worth to what he does with that love. It doesn't ask you to let go of the dream. It asks you to let go of the urgency. Because urgency is fear dressed as longing. And the feminine doesn't manifest union through fear. She manifests it through presence. And here's the mystery. He cannot find you until you lose the version of yourself who needs him to arrive. The divine masculine is not activated by pressure. He is awakened by freedom. And when your field stops clutching, when your soul stops looping the past, when your eyes no longer scan for his return, that's when he begins to feel the pull, not because you called him, but because you let go. Letting go isn't abandoning the connection. It's honoring the truth that love doesn't die just because you stop performing for it. Letting go isn't forgetting him. It's remembering yourself. And here's what most feminines don't realize. The last portal isn't walked together. It's walked alone. It's the sacred threshold where she proves to herself that her joy, her peace, her embodiment are no longer conditional on his readiness. It's the place where she steps forward, not with hope, but with knowing. Knowing that she is enough, that her light was never too much, that her sensitivity was always sacred, that her tears were not weakness, but prophecy, that her voice didn't need to be silenced to be heard by the right soul. And when she walks through that portal, she doesn't look back, not out of bitterness, but because she trusts what's on the other side will find her in divine timing, not because she begged it to, but because she became it. She doesn't wait for him to catch up. She becomes the vibration that makes catching up possible. She doesn't force alignment. She becomes the embodiment that makes alignment inevitable. This is the moment of sacred self-return, and it's the only step that cannot be skipped, because before he finds her in the world, she must find herself without him in it. And when she does, she becomes the portal. Why this stage feels like silence. There comes a moment in the divine feminine's journey where everything feels quiet, too quiet, not just his silence, but a deep soul-level stillness that surrounds everything. The signs slow down. The dreams become more symbolic, less direct. Your body still hums, but there's no message, only presence. You're no longer weeping, but you're not celebrating either. You're just here. And this moment, this stage, can be the most disorienting of all, because it feels like nothing is happening. But in truth, everything is happening. This is the space between the ending and the arrival, the energetic void between cycles, where the masculine has not yet moved, but the feminine has already crossed. You're not in separation. You're not in reunion. You're in the sacred pause. And to the human self, that feels like silence. But to the soul, it feels like alignment. It's the moment the universe holds its breath. The moment your old vibration can no longer sustain you, but the new reality hasn't fully formed yet. Have you felt that? That strange emotional limbo? Where you no longer crave the chase, but you still miss the connection? Where you no longer need him to show up, but you can still feel him, like a whisper just beyond the veil, where your heart is calm, but there's a deep ache, soft and ancient, like something beautiful is almost here. That's not failure. That's not disconnection. That's the integration zone. Because once the feminine steps through the final portal, she doesn't land immediately in union. She lands in a deeper self, one who no longer panics in silence, one who doesn't beg for signs, one who doesn't wait for energy to validate her knowing. She simply is. And that is terrifying at first, because you've spent so long feeling your way through this journey, and now the feelings are quieter, not gone, but steadier. It's like tuning into a new frequency, one you've never held long enough to recognize before. And in that frequency, you're not being tested. You're being stabilized. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your emotional body is adjusting to peace. And peace, for someone who's been through energetic war, can feel like numbness at first. But it's not numbness. It's arrival. And that's exactly what makes this stage so sacred and so misunderstood. You don't feel butterflies anymore because there's nothing left to chase. You don't feel fire in your chest because the resistance has melted. You don't obsess over his movement because your timeline no longer needs external proof. This is where many feminines get confused. They think the connection is fading, but it's not fading, it's rooting. It's dropping into your body in a way that's sustainable. Not electric highs and lows, but divine neutrality, stillness that doesn't require silence from him to be valid, presence that doesn't require his message to feel complete. This is the portal of soul maturity. And when you embody it, he feels it. But here's the paradox. Your shift doesn't make him move instantly, because now he feels the full weight of your detachment. Not emotional withdrawal, but energetic sovereignty. And that triggers something primal in him, because the version of you that longed is gone. The version of you that tolerated breadcrumb energy has burned, and he can feel the difference, even if he can't explain it. You no longer vibrate as someone waiting for love. You now vibrate as love itself. That's what this silence is. It's not a void, it's a throne. And only when the feminine is seated fully in her throne, without shaking, without looking back, can the masculine even begin to recognize her as the queen she's always been. So if you're in that silence now, hold it. Don't rush it. Don't try to fill it. Don't panic because the signs slowed or the feelings dulled. This is your rest. This is your root. This is the space before the spark. And when he finally does feel the pull to rise, it won't be because you waited. It will be because you stopped waiting and started embodying. The silence is not punishment. It's proof. Proof that you've passed through the last threshold. Proof that your nervous system is no longer addicted to the high of false closeness. Proof that your light no longer dims itself for love. So stay steady, divine feminine. If the world feels still, it's because your soul has arrived, and the masculine, even in silence, is feeling the shift. There is a role that only the divine feminine can fulfill. Not because she's more important, not because she holds all the answers, but because her soul agreed, long before this lifetime, to become the portal through which the union is anchored. And while the masculine carries the sword of action, it is the feminine who holds the frequency. She is the guardian of vibration, the weaver of timelines, the keeper of sacred rhythm. And in this final passage, when union begins to unfold in the unseen, it is her steadiness that determines whether the portal stays open or closes once more. That's why this stage feels so delicate. It's not fragile, but it requires precision. Your energy now must become your offering, not to him, but to the field. Because in this moment, the universe is watching, not in judgment, but in resonance. It's scanning for coherence. Can you hold the new frequency without falling back into doubt? Can you trust the silence without making it personal? Can you love him? Release him, feel him all at once, and still remain centered in yourself. Because that is mastery. That is what the final passage asks of you. Not control, not waiting, not surrender to him, but surrender to truth. And truth doesn't need proof. It simply is. That's why the feminine's role is the most misunderstood. She's not here to guide him step by step. She's not here to send love with hope he responds. She's not here to mold herself smaller so he won't run. She's here to be the mountain he finally feels safe enough to climb. But here's the paradox. She must become the mountain, even if he never climbs it. Because this role, her role, is not about being chosen. It's about being anchored in the vibration of her own divine essence, in the remembrance of who she was before love became conditional. And that takes more courage than most will ever understand. Because to hold that frequency, she must walk through fire alone. She must watch the illusions burn. She must shed the layers that once made her feel safe. The stories, the attachment, the hope wrapped in fantasy. She must let them go. And in their place, she builds something real, not from desperation, but from devotion. Devotion to herself, devotion to source, devotion to the sacred promise that her soul made, to become the embodiment of love so fully that love can't help but find its way back to her. But here's what most feminines forget. You're not here to fix him. You're not here to rescue him from his pain. You're not here to convince him of the connection. You are here to live the connection, even when it's invisible. Because the final passage isn't marked by grand gestures. It's marked by inner shifts. When you stop over-explaining your love, when you no longer crave validation, when you stop checking timelines and start checking your own embodiment, that's when the role activates. That's when you step out of the waiting room and into the temple. And the temple doesn't chase. It radiates, it holds, it magnetizes without effort, because it trusts the frequency it is transmitting. So what does that look like practically? It looks like choosing peace over panic when you feel his withdrawal. It looks like dancing with your own energy when you sense the pull, but receive no message. It looks like trusting that you don't have to do anything to prove you're aligned. You only need to be. It means knowing that your presence alone alters timelines, that your wholeness creates a gravitational field stronger than any word he could speak. It means remembering that your sacred yes to yourself, your boundaries, your rest, your joy, is the same yes that opens the door to him if he chooses to walk through it. Because he still has to choose. And that is not your job. But your role is to hold the energy long enough for him to feel it as real. To not give up the moment it gets quiet again. To not slip back into the version of you who believed she was only lovable if she was pursued. To not collapse when the pull intensifies, but the action doesn't match. Yet. Because his action is not your validation. Your vibration is. And if you're still here, breathing, anchoring, softening, trusting, then you are already doing your part. You are the crossing. You are the temple. You are the vibration that union requires. And the more you remember this, the more real it becomes. Because when the feminine knows her role, she no longer needs to ask, "Is he coming?" She already knows. If it is written, it cannot miss her. And even if it takes longer, even if he still stumbles, even if the timelines bend, she is not swayed. Because she knows her power now, and that power is the foundation of union. How to know you're not waiting anymore. There's a moment on this path where something subtle, yet undeniable, happens. You wake up and realize you're not waiting anymore, but it didn't come with fanfare. No sudden declaration, no ritual of release, no dramatic goodbye. It came in the quiet. You didn't even notice it right away. Because waiting doesn't always look like sitting still. Sometimes it looks like hoping silently, checking the energy every morning, watching the clock of divine timing with half trust, half anxiety, reading signs and wondering if they're meant for you or if they're just coincidence. But now, there's space where obsession used to live. There's breath where pressure used to build. There's peace, not constant, but present, where the ache once ruled. So how do you know you're not waiting anymore? You know because your nervous system has stopped negotiating. You're not bargaining with the universe anymore. If I heal this, will he come? If I stay in love, will he feel it? If I hold the energy long enough, will I finally be rewarded? Those questions dissolve because the feminine who is no longer waiting doesn't ask for reward. She becomes the reward. Not out of arrogance, but out of embodiment. She knows that this journey was never a transaction. It was a return. And now that she's returned to herself, she no longer requires his presence to feel whole. That's when the shift happens. Not when he comes back, but when she stops making her life about whether he does. Have you felt this? The moment you make a decision, not out of pain, but out of clarity. The moment you look at the connection and say, I love him and I love me more. The moment you feel his energy and don't spiral, you breathe, that's not apathy, that's power. You didn't lose hope. You released the version of you who was stuck in hope, because hope, when entangled with longing, becomes a leash. And now, you've dropped the leash. So you walk. And walking doesn't mean running away from him. It means walking toward life, toward purpose, toward joy that isn't contingent on messages or signs or potential futures. The feminine who is no longer waiting doesn't stop loving. She just stops withholding her life in case he comes back. That's the truth most don't speak. You can love deeply and still move forward. You can feel the connection and still open to new experiences. You can carry the bond and still release the timeline. Because love is not a care. And union doesn't require suffering to prove it's real. So what else shows you that you're not waiting? You stop trying to explain the connection to yourself, to others, to him. You stop replaying conversations, rereading messages, asking for intuitive hits to know what he's doing. You stop building stories around silence. because silence no longer threatens you. You've befriended it. And in that silence, you began to hear your own voice again, the one that was buried under obsession, the one that was silenced by seeking, the one that whispered, "You are allowed to want more now." And when you listened, something sacred returned. Your timeline, your frequency, your power. Now you make choices not based on, will this align with union, but based on, does this align with me? You stop performing for the quantum mirror. You stop watching your every thought, fearing it'll delay the connection. You relax into your own truth, messy, beautiful, real, and that relaxation is the sign. It means your body isn't holding tension anymore around when. It means your soul trusts that what is yours cannot miss you. And if he is part of that destiny, it will unfold, not because you waited, but because you became ready by not waiting. That's what the masculine will feel, eventually. Not your longing, but your absence of it. Not your constant energetic pulse, but the stillness where your reaching used to be. That stillness will haunt him more than any message ever could, because it will reflect what he is not yet embodying. And yet, that's not your concern anymore. You love him, but you love your mission too. You feel him, but you feel your body more. You sense the bond. But you sense you're becoming even more than that. You're not over it, you've integrated it. And now, you live forward. You let joy come without needing to be sourced from him. You let sadness come too, without assigning it to his absence. You experience life without delay. That's how you know. That's how the universe knows. You are no longer waiting. You are living. And love, the kind that is real, whole, sacred, can only meet you there. What he feels as you cross without him. He doesn't know exactly what's happening, but he feels it. Something changed, not around him, within him. There's a hollow now where your frequency used to sit. A quiet he didn't notice before. But now, it echoes. Not because you left in anger, not because you made a scene, but because this time your energy left first. And that is what the divine masculine cannot explain. Because to him, your energy was always there, even when you weren't. In the moments he ignored your messages, he still felt your devotion in the air. In the silence he gave you, he still received your love through dreams, through warmth, through that invisible tether that never seemed to break. But now, that thread is different. It's not cut, but it's no longer stretched across dimensions by your longing. You're no longer holding it. And that's the moment he begins to feel the true nature of the bond, not through your chasing, your waiting, your energetic offerings, but through the absence of them. Because for so long, he relied on your presence to feel safe in his indecision. Even if he wasn't ready to meet it, he still leaned on the knowing that you were there. But now you're crossing. And you didn't invite him to come. You didn't wait for him to notice. You didn't announce it. You just shifted. And he felt it the same way the body feels the soul slipping out, without warning, but unmistakably. So what does he feel? He feels an ache he can't label. It's not just emotional. It's energetic. It shows up as restlessness, as distraction, as this strange urge to search, but for what? He doesn't know. He may feel the need to call you, but something holds him back. He may check your presence in subtle ways, social media, shared contacts, memories, but it doesn't give him peace. Because peace used to come from the quiet assurance that you were still there. And now the air doesn't hum the same way. The warmth that once wrapped around his chest, like a secret he didn't have to name, is gone. He doesn't realize yet that this isn't punishment. It's evolution. It's the result of you crossing the threshold that he was too afraid to walk toward. And the more you root into your own light, the more his shadows start speaking. They whisper, "Where did she go? Why doesn't she feel near anymore? Why do I miss something I never claimed?" These questions begin to burn, because in the space where he once avoided clarity, now lives a mirror. And that mirror reflects what he refused to hold: your wholeness, your power, your love, unchased. And here's the paradox. Now that you've stopped waiting, he feels your love more, but not as comfort, as consequence. Because love without attachment is confrontational to the ego. It doesn't beg, it doesn't bend. It simply is. And the masculine can no longer escape that. He starts to wonder, was she ever really waiting for me? Or was she preparing herself? Why does her release feel more painful than her longing ever did? What if she's not coming back this time? And maybe that's when the masculine begins to awaken. Not through your giving, but through your absence. Not through your energy chasing him, but through your energy becoming sovereign. That's the medicine he didn't know he needed, because this isn't about punishment. This is about frequency. And now that you've crossed, you exist at a vibration that requires his transformation, not just his attention. That terrifies him. Because attention is easy, presence is harder, but transformation, that's soul work. And yet, he begins to feel the invitation underneath the ache. The pull isn't gone, it's deeper now. It no longer calls to his desire, it calls to his purpose. Because if he wants to meet you on the other side, he can't just reach out. He has to rise. He has to do what you did. He has to look at his wounds, face his resistance, release his control, and walk, not toward you, but through his own fire. And when that happens, when he finally accepts that the old way of relating to you is over, that's when the soul within him whispers, she's not punishing you, she's preparing the field. Because in truth, you didn't leave him. You simply stopped dragging him across timelines he wasn't ready to inhabit. You honored your crossing, and now he must choose to rise or remain, to activate or delay. But no matter what he chooses, he will never forget the moment he realized you weren't waiting, you were becoming. And in that becoming, he finally saw who you truly are. Not just a counterpart, not just a mirror, but a sacred force that will no longer dim. Because the feminine who crosses without him doesn't close the door in anger. She simply stops holding it open with her energy. And that is when he learns what loss truly feels like. There comes a moment in every soul contract where no more energy can be pushed, pulled, offered, or withheld. Only truth remains, only presence speaks. And now, divine feminine, that's exactly where you are. You've done what few could do. You stayed long enough to see yourself. You loved deep enough to be undone. You waited, but not blindly. You waited with reverence until the waiting itself transformed you. And now it's done. Not because love has ended, but because alignment has arrived. And in this new frequency, he cannot be dragged forward. He must walk. He must choose. The field is set. Everything that needed to be revealed has been. Everything that needed to rise to the surface has. Every echo, every delay, every moment of silent longing has led to this, the crossroads. And this time, it's not between you and him. It's between himself and his truth. Because you are no longer the open door. You are the destination. He can't knock and run anymore. He can't hover at the edge of awakening, hoping you'll keep the fire lit while he decides if he's ready to feel it. That time has passed. You've become the flame now, and only the courageous will step into it. So what does it mean when we say the field is set? It means everything that could be done from your side of the connection already was. You anchored love. You released expectation. You embodied your light. You grieved what never fully formed, while still holding sacred what lives in the unseen. You stopped chasing potential and started living reality. You held his energy with compassion, and then with boundaries. You let yourself want him without needing him. And now, the field is vibrating with a new intelligence, one that doesn't bend to fear or nostalgia, one that doesn't wait for breadcrumbs, one that says, I'm ready for union, with or without him. This is the exact moment where the masculine feels the tremor. He may not know why he's restless. He may not know why he can't stop thinking of you. He may not yet understand the weight of the choice before him, but he knows it's now. Not someday, not next season, now. Because something about your energy has changed. He no longer feels the same pull, but that's because you're no longer pulling. He no longer feels your heart on standby, because it's not. You're in motion now, and to meet you, he must move too. He must cross the illusions that once kept him safe, the silence that once made him feel strong, the pride that once protected his wounds. He must look at the mirror, the one you've held for so long, and say, I see myself now, and I choose to rise. But if he doesn't, if fear still rules him, if timing still paralyzes him, then you keep moving, not to escape him, but to honor you. Because you didn't come here to teach someone how to choose you. You came here to embody what it looks like to choose yourself. And sometimes that's exactly what triggers the masculine into his deepest awakening. Not your sacrifice, not your waiting, but your alignment. The moment he feels that your light no longer needs his permission to burn, that's when the soul remembers. But remember this too. His choice is not your burden. You are not less whole if he delays. You are not less radiant if he hesitates. And you are certainly not less divine if your paths diverge. The union was never the prize. Your becoming is. Because the feminine walking in her power is not the ending of the story. It's the beginning of a reality where love doesn't require permission, where devotion doesn't mean self-erasure, where union is built on mutual evolution, not dependency, not delay. And if he's truly your mirror, he will feel it, he will choose, he will rise. But if he doesn't, then that's still clarity, because the field is set. And the divine does not force alignment, it reveals it and asks us to act. So now it's his turn. Not to chase you, not to perform, but to meet you where you've risen, to make the crossing, not because he's afraid to lose you, but because he's ready to find himself with you. If he's ready, he'll feel the frequency. He'll hear the call. He'll step in. But either way, your path continues. With peace, with power, with presence. Because you are no longer the one waiting at the edge of becoming. You have already crossed.